Hello and welcome to Living Strong, the flip side of adversity. I am Dr. Virdra Jackson, the CEO and creative of Living Strong Consulting, and we're continuing our conversation around resilience and strength and healing. And I have a unique guest on the show with me today. So this is actually an example of paying attention, looking up, and being willing to connect with people you don't know.
Mhm.
My guest, one of my guests today, as many of who follow me know that Living Strong, we decided to open an office. And so I've been in the office since February. And this woman has been in and out the office. I think we even passed each other a few
Yeah,
times.
several times.
But
Yeah.
we're in the kitchen and I feel someone walk up next to me and start talking. And when I tell you immediately connected,
Yeah.
immediately connect. We talked in the kitchen, then we talked down the hall, then we talked in my
Yes.
office, and just kept going. And her
Mm.
wisdom,
Oh,
her passion for serving families, for serving youth, for building and even connecting, why this conversation is so powerful, even serving and supporting providers in
mhm.
understanding what's getting in their way. The conversation was electric. So, you know what I did? My listeners need to hear from you. So she said yes. And then she said, I need to bring my partner with me. I said, all right, we will have a full conversation. So I know you are on the edge of your seat, wondering who these special guests are that we're going to have this flip side conversation tonight, talking to, talking and advocating for, and hopefully providing wisdom, insight, and tools to families, to those who care for youth, and for providers who are feeling stuck and uncertain and dysregulating. We're going to try and cover all of it. But first, let me tell you who I have. Dr. Jennifer Benjamin is a licensed professional counselor, an independent practitioner in the greater Philadelphia region. Dr. Benjamin is the clinical fidelity specialist for the Philadelphia Child and Family Therapy Training Center. Her responsibilities include oversight of continuing education programs, curriculum development, researching the ESFT model and assessment tools, and developing the organizational practices to ensure the integration of social ecology and family culture across all trainings, supervisions, and case conceptualizations and clinical consultations. She received her doctorate, PhD, in industrial and organizational psychology from Capella University and a Master of Arts degree in counseling psychology from Immaculata University. I know. Now, I could have gone on because her credentials, her experience is vast. And I want you to have a chance to actually hear from her. So I had to stop the bio there because it would have taken up probably the rest of the half of the show. Because let me tell you, Miss Pinky Patel,
Yes.
also extensive bio, heart-centered work, just reading the work that she does. You could feel the passion for serving others just jump off the page. So let me give you the details of just some of her credentials. Miss Pinky Patel is a program director at Creative Health Services, overseeing an in-home systemic family therapy program with 24/7 crisis response for several emotionally disturbed youth in life-altering circumstances and life-threatening behaviors. She is the Associate Director of the Philadelphia Child and Family Therapy Training Center, where she oversees organizational development, provides executive consultation for program implementation, clinical training, licensure supervision, and continuing education courses. She has her Master's of Arts degree in Marriage and Family Therapy from LaSalle University and is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is an approved American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy supervisor. I know you're like, we are going to get informed in this episode. Exactly. Now, not only do you not pass on an opportunity to talk with someone who is like-minded and has a passion that fills you the same way you hope you feel others. You don't pass on that conversation. But when they have the credentials to support it, it's a definite yes. So, welcome to the flip side of adversity conversation, Jennifer and Pinky.
Thank you. We're very excited to be here.
Oh,
I've been looking forward to this.
yeah. I know. I've
been looking for you at the office, and I'm like,
I know, right? This has been in planning for a couple of months now. Yes. Mm-hmm. So we are finally here, and let's jump into it because I have several questions. Yes. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to, if you're on social media, drop them into the comments or call into the station. So when I was doing my homework, you have a resource on your website, and the opening quote to the resource shares, children with emotional and behavioral disorders are often adrift in our society, lacking adequate mental health care or caught between several child-serving systems such as child welfare, juvenile justice, and the schools. And when I saw that quote, I said, there is no other time that is ringing so true right now. And adults are scratching their heads, pulling on their heart with, what do I do? And so my question is, how do you see each family uniquely as you are trying to navigate systems, diagnoses, stress? How do you, recognizing everything that's going on, how do you still go into a home or have someone come to you and you're able to pull out the unique qualities within them? Either one.
You want to start?
Yeah, I just think about the chaos you're talking about that you walk into, and you have to really take this position that these people have lived experiences that are invaluable, but they've been just overtaken by adversity. And how the trauma and tragedy and hardship is impacting them. And they just need somebody who will hold space to say, I see you and you are capable. But you really have to position yourself that way.
I so agree. Because I think about when that visual image of the chaos I feel like that chaos has families forget the power that they have.
Right.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? And so, Pinky, what are some of your thoughts?
So for me, to build off of what Jen is saying, is also around, I try to enter in with, every family has a story, right? And we're all part of a family or a system. We've all been influenced in one way or another by those relationships that we've had across our lifetimes. And they've allowed us to build on our character, our values, so on and so forth. And there have been times where those resources, those strengths have built resiliency for us. And then there have been times where we've needed a little bit more right? And so we turn to a new person or someone else in a different way to add to what we've already got. So for me, whenever I'm walking into a new family, it's really about wanting to hear their story of how did you get here? What are those stories? What are those relationships that speak very clearly and loudly to you when you turn to your child if you're a caregiver, or when that child is turning to you as their caregiver? And so really it then stops being so much about what's in front of you as the referral behavior and more about how is this behavior showing up in context of the system that we're all a part of, because we're all reacting and responding to what's around us.
Yes, that concept or awareness of that we are operating in a system. We're responding to the elements within this system, and they can be healthy or maladaptive, survival or victorious. But where we are creating our responses.
Yeah.
How would you say, because I know as I coach home visitors who are the ones walking into the chaos, and then part of my role is to help them pull apart all of the things that just happen so it doesn't stay stuck in their soul. When you are walking into spaces that have so many things happening within the system, almost to the point where do I begin? What skills do you use to actually listen for root, for system, as opposed to getting swept up into problem? What listening strategies do you use?
So many thoughts. Do you want to start?
Yeah, for me,
our brains are exploding.
And I think you're talking to my soul, which is that supervision piece and understanding who we are on a human level.
Yes.
And how that shows up in our therapeutic relationships. Right? Because when we move too fast through that space, it's our own dysregulation or trauma or our own life experiences that are getting in the way. And, we have to give space and we have to honor that, because so long as a society, we're taught that you just have to push past your stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Or you're bad for having stuff.
Right.
Don't get me started.
Right.
We'll be here all day.
Right.
Right.
So for us, it's really about recognizing and acknowledging what that quote unquote stuff is. Because then once you recognize it, you can look at a referral or, an evaluation or whatever the case may be. You can start to think about what's coming up for me on an emotional level or an intuitive level that is either going to be a strength or resiliency of my own that I can bring into this work, or it's going to present as a challenge or a barrier. And if it is, I better take myself to supervision or a consultation and start talking about, hey, like, I can see myself getting caught up in this because I've had this experience. And I know that when I'm sitting in a space like that, this is how it shows up in my body, in my head, right? In my heart. And when that happens, we as individuals all have a trauma response. We fight, we flight, we faint, or we fawn, right? And so for some of us, that looks like we start pushing through as quickly as possible, and maybe unintentionally, because we're trying to take care of ourselves and everybody else in the space there, we push our agenda through.
Yes.
And for some of us, we just become frozen and we're not sure what to do. And now everything is playing out and becoming really big in their space.
And now I'm swept up.
Well,
in
now
the chaos.
you get pulled into, well, you're talking about the other way to think about the chaos is the culture of the family, right?
Right.
The family has rules, beliefs, rituals, and traditions. And the moment you cross that threshold, you're in their culture,
Right.
right? And so if we think about what Pinky's bringing up, we're really talking about, let's start being prepared
Mhm.
that when you walk through the threshold, you're gonna feel stuff.
You're
Yes.
supposed to, though. Isn't that part of being
Yes.
empathetic to your
Be a
clients and your
human.
families?
Feel
Right?
things.
Yeah.
Having the gift for the work.
Correct. You have to have
Yes.
one foot in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know from even just some of our short
Mhm.
conversations that you have some core philosophies, some universal practices or approaches that help you stay informed of how to approach families. Just
Mhm.
as the title you selected for this episode, universal practices or approaches that help
Mhm.
the provider, and I feel like the family, remember you actually still have power.
Mhm.
You're
Oh, yeah.
pivotal
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
this change
Mhm.
process.
Mhm.
What are some keys,
Yeah.
Mhm.
practices that you can share with many of the home visitors, the professionals who are listening?
Well, when you think about this idea of being prepared, right? That's what
Mhm.
I hear you saying.
Yep.
So when you walk through the door and you engage with the family, how are you doing it in a way that immediately sets the tone of elevating the caregiver, right?
Mhm.
That you are setting the tone, you are the leader, I'm the professional, right? Because really the professional's job is to help that leader gain back that place where they can nurture their child and promote their growth and development. And what happens, because we get uncomfortable, we will end up becoming central
Mhm.
and do the work for the caregiver, right?
Right.
So the first thing is we at all times use ourselves in service of the family to promote the caregiver.
But I don't want us to move too fast past what you just said because it's golden
Mhm.
that they are the leader. Like being able to empower and remind, even in my chaos, my mistakes, the things that haven't gone the way that I hope they had, in that, even in that,
Mhm.
Mhm.
to still be identified
Mhm.
as the leader
Mhm.
is, woo,
But it
powerful.
literally starts. Pinky and I were just training the other day and we were talking about, I go up to the door and I knock and the 8-year-old answers the door and says, come in. If I enter at that moment, the meta message is your child's in charge of this home and so am I.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
stand and I wait.
Mhm.
Now, maybe the caregiver comes out and goes, why are you letting the air out? Get in the house. And I go, oh, of course, Mrs.
Mhm.
Smith, I just wanted to wait till you invited me in. Thank you so much for having me here. Right. But how you enter in that first moment can set the tone
Yes.
for the remainder of treatment. Right. Because
Yes.
I don't want that caregiver to think I don't need them there.
Mm. Yes. Yes.
When you talk about setting the tone, Jen, right? Like
Mhm.
that what is that tone? That tone is to be collaborative
Yep.
with the
Yes.
caregivers, right? To put them back in a position of leadership and empowerment where they feel like they can create an environment where there's healing that's happening
Mm.
as well as development that allows their children and the family as a whole to be successful long term, right? And so that's got to start before you walk in that door and when you walk in that door.
Mhm.
So when we talk about collaboration, it's really this idea of the family is the expert on the family. The caregivers are the expert on the family. They know what the rules, rituals, beliefs are from a
Mhm.
cultural standpoint that have driven and guided their family
Mhm.
through the generations and through, various adversities over the years where it's generational trauma, historical trauma, racial systems, all the full gamut of different social ecology layers. And we also then simultaneously create space for us as practitioners to be the experts on the therapy,
Or the
right? So there's
whatever it
room
is,
for
the
both of
service.
us to
Yeah.
have power.
Yes. Yes. That really communicating that you are the expert of your story
Mhm.
and making sure that you are walking into the invitation for now me to become a new chapter.
Mhm.
And how
That's it.
can I help you with this chapter?
Right.
Yeah, it's that narrow negative narrative. And what we're doing is trying to shed light on all of these pieces so they can just keep writing because the
Yeah.
story's not done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How do you define culture of every family? I so appreciate really talking about how external systems and internal systems are impacting, re-traumatizing, um, oppressing, all of that families, trapping them
Mhm.
into systems. I'm curious on two ends of the conversation. One, how do you support other professionals in understanding when I witness a culture that is not the same as mine?
Mhm.
How do I navigate that moment? Like, because sometimes we want to make that thing match what I'm used to.
Yep.
And then I get stuck in the moment because, well, they're wrong. If they would
Oh
just
my
do
gosh.
it.
I was thinking it and it came out of your mouth. Right? Like,
Yeah.
we label things as wrong or
Yeah.
bad because we want to fix
Yeah.
it based off our lens.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. How do we move past that? How do we move past that?
So let me answer your first question, right?
Yes.
Is how do I define culture? For me, culture is defined as what are the rules, rituals, beliefs, values that I have been exposed to throughout my lifetime in the various relationships that I've had that impact me, but that also influence me in my decision making and who I am from a social identity component,
Wow.
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's the first part. So, because
Yeah.
all of those things also deeply
Yes.
impact as a parent how I show up for my 14-year-old daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's that component of it. And then the other piece of this is really when you talk about like when there's differences,
Mhm.
what do we define that as? Well, we can define it as conflict, but really what it is about is how my rules, rituals, beliefs, values, and morals are maybe different than what yours are. And now we have to sit in that space of not about who's right and who's wrong, but how do we create space for both to coexist?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And
Yep.
I think there's such immediately as you were talking about it, my mind went to it's not a conflict, it's actually an opportunity.
Yes.
That if we leaned in, that there's an opportunity for me to learn from you
Yeah.
and for me
Yeah.
to share with you as well.
Right.
But if I get stuck in but that's wrong, it sabotages
Yeah.
the entire process. And in some ways, would you agree that it robs the family of that power that you planned to be able to share in when you arrived? Oh, this is so good. So you defined culture.
Mhm.
So what is being culturally responsive?
Mm. I just think about when you're sitting with the family and you start to observe the parental leadership, the co-caregiver alliance, the co-regulation, the attachment. We often tell our trainees, what questions do you have instead of just giving an observation? Get curious.
We are
right?
such kindred spirits.
I told you. That's why I was like,
So
I must talk to you,
Oh,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but
yes.
it's like, wow, I see how you've instilled in your child such a strong work ethic.
Right.
Can you tell me where that comes from,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
where my work ethic comes from is unique to me. And part of it is also thinking about like whatever we discover in somebody else, we can discover the same thing in a different direction within ourselves,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So it's really about this discipline of curiosity, but also, when you start to realize as a professional, I don't have to have the answer to fix it. I just have to have the discipline to be curious and build their voice.
Right.
You don't have to work so hard.
Say
No.
that again, because I feel like you just set some people free. I don't have to have all of the answers to fix it.
Right? When the
No.
caregiver goes, fix my
No.
kid.
Right.
Fix my
Right.
kid.
Right.
I don't know what to do. You fix it.
Right.
Right.
And we're so used to fixing things that we forget. Sometimes it's about managing it, right?
Mm.
So when you say fix it or work so hard, when you take the shift of families being their own best resources, what you start to look at is this idea of there's an African proverb that somebody had shared with me in a training, I think 2 years
Yeah.
ago.
And all our jaws hit the
And
floor. Yeah.
this gentleman said the proverb is that when a child does not feel the warmth of the village, he or she will burn it down.
I need that to connect with the episode. Everybody who listened to the episode on the power of the village,
Mm-hmm.
you just saw that connection. You just saw it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's literally what's happening in our communities right now.
Correct.
Everywhere.
Literally.
Correct. And so when that happens, what we're talking about is usually it's not just that child that is not feeling the warmth. It is also the parents, it's also the caregivers around them. It is probably also other members of that village. And so we have to oftentimes come together to say, you've got this, I've got this. Let's put this together to make things a little bit bigger. Let's expand our
Mm.
ecosystem and our resources.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really that shift that we talk
Mhm.
about.
Well,
Mhm.
and if you think about what she's saying, so imagine you're the professional sitting in that moment. You don't have to fix it. You just have to be disciplined and brave enough to say, turn to your alliance.
Mm. Yeah.
And when you get uncomfortable, I'll sit here with you. I'll stand by you. And I need you to turn to your alliance,
Yes.
right?
Break that down for someone who's thinking, so what if I don't have no, what does my alliance
Oh, we
look
hear
like?
that all the time, right? So can I
Go
give you an
ahead. Yeah.
example? So
Mhm.
we had a family that we worked with years ago. And so oftentimes you do hear that from, single parents or even
Mm.
both parents are in the home, but they're working, whatever the circumstances are. And they're like, there is nobody, my family lives farther away and it's just us. There is nobody I can call upon. So when we sit down and use our assessment tools, like in EcoMap, we sit down and talk about, okay, tell me who brings fuel to your fire
Mm.
and who brings water to your fire, right? Who are the
Right.
energy draining sources and who are the energy providing sources? And when you
Mhm.
shift it that way
Mhm.
and you start looking at what would it look like for you to have a different relationship with that person, whether it's formally like the school, the community,
Oh,
the
yeah.
church,
I don't
the
care.
neighbors.
I want to know everybody. I
Right?
want to know what's taking energy and what's giving
Yeah.
energy. If someone says, I got nobody, I'm like, okay, who's taking your energy? Show me.
Right.
Tell me.
Right.
Let's map it out.
Yeah. So
Right.
Yeah.
So in this instance, what it was, well, I have a sister who lives, maybe 10 minutes away, but I can't ask her, well, why not? Well, she's dealing with cancer. Okay, so hardship, tragedy is also, and adversity are also knocking at her door as well as your door.
Mhm.
And she's got a lot going on. I oftentimes bring her food for her and her family, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
What the shift was then that this parent was oftentimes just dropping it off and then coming home. Rather, the shift was, why don't you have dinner with your family and her family?
Yep.
And that allows your child to feel connected to the rest of the family while you're also feeling like, now I've built reciprocity in our relationship, because people oftentimes turn away from those relationships when they feel like a burden on those
Oh,
relationships.
or can I-
Isolation.
Yes.
Isolation
Yes.
immediately.
Well,
Yes, Jennifer.
or the professional says, okay, let's add all these formal supports.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
More people coming in. And I feel like it can end up becoming this domino effect of where I'm looking for all of these other people to fix my life.
Mhm.
And again, I'm caught in a spiral
Correct.
of powerlessness.
Right.
And unless someone else comes in to fix it, I'm doomed.
I'm always going to be looking for fish because I never learned how to
Never learned
catch
how
my
to-
own.
Right.
Right. And so that's the shift is
Mhm.
we're going to do it together so that you can, when
Mhm.
we leave, you can catch your own fish.
What do you think are the biggest missteps that providers are making in this season? And I want to honor that this is such a hard time.
It's unique.
I am
Mhm.
so deeply impacted
Mhm.
as I talk or coach with providers who they themselves had to walk out of a house and they sat in there triggered the whole time. So give us some nuggets. What do you think are some of the biggest missteps that providers and professionals are making as they're working with youth, children, youth, and then the family? Any of the above?
Mm.
I would say the first one is what you just said, right? And I think it's gotten bigger and bigger as the years have gone on, is oftentimes we're feeling like we're functioning in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Both with the family but also with ourselves, and we're not doing that thing, that parallel process part, isomorphism,
Yes.
of looking at how we connect with our relationships
Yep.
to feel our feet firmly on the ground. So
Yeah.
that's, I think, oftentimes the biggest hurdle, at least from what I've experienced,
Yeah.
even for me, is when I am not slowing myself down and turning to somebody and saying, I'm having these big thoughts and feelings inside of me, and they're not coming out of me, to talk it through with someone like you or Jen or whoever the case may be, then I'm just left sitting in that. And it's not helpful to me. It's certainly not helpful to the family either.
So Jen, before you jump in here, because I'm thinking specifically about a conversation,
Mhm.
but if I share that, I'm not being professional.
Mhm.
If I show that I am triggered or I'm upset,
Yeah.
I'm no longer
Yeah.
being professional.
Right.
How do you respond?
In order for you to help the family practice asking for help, we've got to help you practice asking for it so that you can actually then use that in your relationship with that caregiver to say, I get how hard it is.
Yes. In some respects, you're actually cultivating professional development for yourself in the moment
Yes.
of learning how to ask for what you need.
Right.
Because oftentimes we will talk with families and ask, so what is it that what do you feel like is your greatest need? And they are lost.
Right.
And oftentimes I will ask professionals, so tell me what you feel that you need. And they're lost.
And I have learned over the years to even expand on those questions to ground this in, this is what I think.
Yes.
This is how I feel.
Yes.
This is what I want. And this is what I need.
Say that one more time.
This is what I think. this is how I feel, this is what I want, and this is what I need.
Mm-hmm.
Because want and need are two different things,
Two
and
different
thinking and
things.
feeling are also very different
Two
things.
different things. Two
Yep.
different things. Jennifer, jump in here.
Well, I mean, yeah, the thing that just keeps coming up is like asking people to do things we're unwilling to do for ourselves. Right. And so I cannot tell you how many times I've turned to a caregiver and said, I'm going to talk to you about something that's really hard and that's probably going to be difficult to do, but I want you to know I'm not asking you to do something I have not done myself. And that's where the humanness becomes invaluable. I mean, Salvador Minuchin didn't care what your credentials were. You could go to the center and you could train, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we practice the things that we are asking of others, our true empathy is so compelling and intrinsically motivating, not only for us to be brave, but they feel it.
Yes.
They can feel when we're saying, like, did you check the box on the behavior scale?
Right.
Versus, I know I'm asking you to do something that will make you feel afraid because I felt afraid when I did it. I'm not self-disclosing all my business,
right.
but I'm honoring the fact that, like, parent to parent, this is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Human, I see you. I've walked this journey, sharing that it was work. It wasn't comfortable. Don't lean back away from the discomfort. I'm here.
Right.
I'm not going to move from this space. I'm actually wired to be able to stay in this space with you. All of those elements. And I actually had a conversation actually just yesterday, and I pushed a button, and I knew I pushed a button because as a coach, I said, honestly, though, you're lacking integrity if you're expecting people to make all of these changes, be willing to comply, change, grow, and you're sitting across from me saying, I can't or I'm not going to.
Yeah.
That lacks integrity. And it was a whole like, oh, but their word's important. Okay, then what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I want to lean into the supervisor lens because I know I've got some administrators listening.
Sure.
How do you walk? Not train. How do you walk your staff or the person that you're supervising? How do you walk them out of that armored up place? How do you help them recognize it's okay to work on you? I know.
Right here, this one.
How do you do it?
I have to be very aware of myself, right? So I love Brene Brown.
Yes.
And what we're essentially talking about is the idea of practicing vulnerability and bravery.
Yes.
And teaching others to be brave and vulnerable. But that's got to start from within, right? So if I'm stuck, I have to be willing to turn to my staff and say, I'm stuck and I need your help. Or the other one that I use so often is, help me understand.
Yes.
Right? I'm confused. Help me understand.
Yes.
What am I missing? Right? And it's not just what am I missing? Because when we talk, I will say, what did I get right? And what did I miss?
That's really vulnerable for the leader, the administrator to ask for help. So what I'm hearing you say is it literally trickles down. So the administrator has to be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah. And
to model.
And you have to acknowledge out of the gate on day one of that relationship that we're not going to get it right by each other. We are not. That is the nature of relationships. There will inevitably be conflict, and people are afraid to have that conversation of whether you label it as when my value system, when my belief system is different than yours, how do we work together? Or it's simply when conflict occurs in our relationship, when we have a different of
Yeah.
opinion, how are we going to turn towards one another
Yep.
versus turning away from one another?
Yes. Oh, that is in my mind. I literally see the connection from here to here to here. Because if we can't do it as professionals, as colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
as supervisor to supervisee, if we can't do it in this realm, again, for me, it lacks integrity that we're now in this family's
Yeah.
ecosystem
Yep.
and telling them,
Yeah.
well, you need to lean in. You need to go
Right.
over and spend some time
Right.
with the sister instead of just dropping off. It's all interconnected.
Right. And we are also professionals, right? So there are certain things that are just not up for negotiation because they're bound to safety, they're bound to laws, whatever the case
Ethics,
may
yeah.
be, or ethics.
Mhm.
And we have to sit in that space out of the gate to say, when I put my gatekeeper hat on
Mhm.
and this thing comes up, right? I've had to say, I can help you have a conversation. We can talk about what's coming up for you because I'm putting a boundary around this, or I'm putting an expectation here,
Mhm.
or we can talk about how I can support you in meeting that.
Yes.
So it's both, right? Like this is
Yes.
non-negotiable, and how do we flesh out our role and responsibility to one another to make this work?
Because there are expectations. Like there are things that absolutely must be
Mhm.
done.
Mhm.
So as a supervisor, not avoiding it, not getting frustrated, not just sitting in it, but actually also leaning in and staying curious.
Well, yeah, gosh, it's so important too to really how Pinky talks about the approach, because the other thing that's coming up, if we think about having leadership watching or administrators,
Mhm.
I mean, we're also talking about those leaders have a privilege in that relationship, right? Just like professionals do when they walk through the door. And it's like, what are you going to do with that privilege that you have? Like,
Mm.
are you going to position it as doing something relational? Or are you going to do something that's corrective and behavioral and criticizing,
Mm.
right? Because
Mm.
at the end, what's going to promote the most development in the staff, the professional, in the mother or the caregiver or the child? And it's going to be the relational, that moment of
Mhm.
uncomfortableness
Mhm.
and promoting their growth in that opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And that's what
Mhm.
I think I've always admired about how Pinky turns to her staff, because it's so easy as a leader to say, I'll do it next time. Right. But if we do that, the staff are going to do that. Right.
Next
And
time.
Yeah.
so Pinky has to discipline herself, take a deep breath, go into her slow brain and say, help me understand what's going on for you. And we can either address this or this, right? Sometimes we have to make choices in the absence of desired
Right.
choices, or we
Yes.
can do both, but
Right.
we're going to do this right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what she wants her staff to do with the caregivers and the caregivers with the children. You are treasured, and I have to lead you.
Yes.
Right?
And they're
You are
allowed to have a
treasured.
pass, right? Like there are going to be things that come up where it's just not the right time or day to
Mhm.
process
Yeah.
things. At the end of the day, though, like whatever crisis of the moment they're coming in with, it's really content. There's a bigger picture, there's an underlying like process that's happening here. So I'm only going to give you that pass so many times where I say, hey, we keep coming back to this. And I'm worried that if we don't look at this, that you're not going to, because you have to believe that we as professionals want to get it right by the family just as much as the family wants to get it right, or the caregivers want to get it right by the child.
Yeah.
That I'm worried that you're going to feel like you're always missing something.
Yes.
Right. I've had to say, I want to help you get that A+. So, we have to sit in this. Like, let's look at this. Let's talk about this. You
Yeah.
know, how are you addressing this? And be
Mm-hmm.
able to say, because they sometimes have to go into the homes and say to a caregiver, I'm worried that unless you talk about all of the ways in which your trauma, your lived experiences are
Mhm.
showing up in your relationship that are causing you to turn away, if you're not addressing it, or if we don't help you find a way to address it,
Mm-hmm.
that it is going to continue that process.
Right.
Mhm.
And
And
that's
this
the
kid,
system.
right, this
Right.
kiddo is going to pick up
Yeah.
if
Then it
whatever is
becomes
not processed,
generational.
right,
Yeah.
Mhm.
from one generation to the next. I cannot believe how fast our time is going by. I love just everything about your philosophy, your approach. Tell us a little bit more about how uniquely positioned your organization is in addressing and supporting the needs of families and professionals.
You want to? So, I mean, we provide trainings across the board for lots of different programs and community based providers in the state of Pennsylvania, as well as Delaware. But we've also started providing trainings with, we have an organization in Canada that we've provided trainings for that are also bringing more of the systemic therapy models into their work
Mhm.
with in-home care with children and youth and adolescents. So there's training opportunities there, but there's also additional supervision, consultation opportunities that continue to expand and grow, and continuing education for those professionals that are seeking licensure credits or continuing ed credits.
So I want to make sure, because I never want to just take for granted that
Mhm.
people understand or know terminology.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when you mention a systemic approach
Mhm.
to supporting
What
break
does
that
that mean?
down. Yes.
So that means that when we talk about that village,
Mhm.
we are also part of that village, right? The
Mhm.
family is a part of that village. The family is also a system. They operate in certain ways. When
Yep.
you change one person, the rest of the relationships within that system are also going to inevitably change.
Mhm.
So we work in the way that we are bringing everybody together. We're mindful of how we show up,
Mhm.
but also about what are the other members of this village, this community that can be brought into this, or that are impacting this child or this family in the ways in which they function.
So
Yeah.
it is a focus on the actual ecosystem of the
You
family.
got
Mhm.
it.
Yes.
You got it.
Yes.
I'll
I
I'll
love
even
it.
say to people, many other approaches are that the child is the problem,
Right.
and not on purpose, right? But that's
To go in the service,
unfortunately
the child.
right.
Mhm.
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 And
Mhm.
systemic family therapy focuses on the relationship is the problem.
Mhm.
Yes. Say that again.
So the
Systemic.
child, the
Mhm.
child is not the problem. The relationship is the problem. The relationship is the client. That's what we're treating, the relationship.
The relationship is the client.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, not the problem is not the child. Oh
Mhm.
my goodness. Wait, oh, I still have 5 questions, y'all. Okay, so look. So to that point,
Yeah.
and this is an international show, but I'm actually
Mhm.
just like thinking about some very specific context of things that I've been impacted with clients in Philadelphia and the
Mhm. Mhm.
nearby regions. And I know you serve tweens and teens, and you had a very interesting blog post on your website. So, how can we begin to reach, use strategies? No, the child isn't the problem, but if we're thinking about how that system, village,
Mhm.
could become more attuned
Mhm.
to the teen or the tween,
Mhm.
what could we begin to think about more deeply?
Mhm.
I just think about how we we lean into people? Like, how do we, when we meet somebody, it's kind of like when I met you,
Yeah.
right? It was like, I leaned in and I was like, tell me about yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Literally, y'all. Literally.
Yeah.
Standing in the kitchen. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But it's really going against the grain, right? So the system says there are absolute truths, there are rights and wrongs, there are ways things are supposed to be. And what we are saying is, what if everybody's truth is their lived experience?
Mhm.
So yours is true, hers is true, mine is true. Then that means when we show up with people, it's like, tell me more about that. And when they tell you, don't say, I get it. You say, I think I get it.
understood.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little
Yeah.
more? And who taught you that? Where did
Yeah.
you learn that? Where does that
Yeah.
come from? I think, like, in a universal sense, there's shifting from absolutes and facts and psychoeducation to collaboration and curiosity and co-discovery and joining, right? That's where we get our foot in the door, and then people experience, you know what? They get me.
Mhm.
Right.
And I'm going to try some things I would not have been willing to do, you know?
But what's powerful for me in what you just shared, I did some healing conversations, circles in Reading, PA, and our goal was to bring different generations
Oh,
together.
yeah.
But the rule was, when the young people start talking, you have to be quiet and just listen. Even if it wasn't what you did when you were 10, 12, even if it is shocking, even
Mhm.
if they use profanity, even if they
Mhm.
staying quiet so they actually feel fully heard.
Sometimes we ask those curious questions and we forget to be accepting of what the answer is, right? Or
Mhm.
sensitive to the answer. So oftentimes it's like, let's be, I'm going to help you practice being curious, accepting, and sensitive.
Wow.
Of they're telling you an answer, but what's really underneath the surface
Mhm.
of that answer?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it.
I mean, I am so grateful. Like, I didn't know you were doing that, but I have to say, the thing that strikes me so hard in hearing you talk about what you did is that, so you had made this question about, like, all the stuff going on with our youth in the communities. And I just think about what happens for a youth that they turn to violence, they turn to a gun, they turn to suicide, they turn to self-harm. And it's that they feel invalidated, invisible, that they're a burden. And then you created containment for everybody to try something new
Mhm.
at a really large level. And that's it right there, right?
I love
Like,
that
it's
vision.
so simple, it's complex.
Mhm. Mhm. You know what? It is simple, but so complex because we
Mhm.
make it so hard.
Mhm.
As humans, we make it so hard. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe we could keep going for another hour. But I know you are wondering, these women are phenomenal. How can we follow what they are doing? We don't want to miss another thing. So please share with our listeners before we say so farewell. Share with them how they can find you.
Mhm.
Where
Yeah.
can they get connected?
So we're on Facebook, the Philadelphia Child and Family Therapy Training Center. We're on Instagram. Um, if you really want to get in and get all the exclusive access, join our blog, right? So if you go to pcfttc.com, it's abbreviation for our long name, then you can subscribe to our blog and you'll get access to role plays, Dr. Sims stories, journeys, competitions, all sorts of fun things.
There you have it. I hope you have been so filled, reassured, some way confirmed, and affirmed in what you're doing, whether you are a caregiver or you are a provider. I hope you found something. Make sure you share this with others. And same time, same place next week. We're here on the flip side. We'll see you then. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, you too. You
Thank
too.
you.
Oh, is it done?
It
Okay, we
is. So
can-
the radio
okay.
part is done.
Okay.
But Facebook family, as always, you know, sometimes when we have in-house guests,
Mhm.
they will hang around for a question or two more. So if you have a specific question, feel free to toss it out there.
Mhm.
I would like, since I had four others that we didn't get to, can you continue to actually because I'm looking at some of the people who are specifically here.
Mhm.
Can you give us some strategies for dysregulation if you are the provider, the professional?
Oh, I
Oh,
love
look,
this.
Pinky
I
stood
just did.
right
I'm
up.
ready. I'm ready.
She
Well,
I
so
just did it.
yeah, so here's the
Yes.
thing, right? Emotions are habitual responses.
Mhm.
So, in our whole body, everything from our breath to our muscle tension, the way our face moves, all shifts when we're having emotions, right? So, when you want to shift your emotion, you have to shift your body, right? If you're holding your breath, drop your jaw, right? Force air in. If you're feeling withdrawn, put on a half smile,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yes.
and I practice it before
Mhm.
you need it. It sounds so silly,
Mm.
right? Or pushing your breath into your belly instead of keeping it in your chest. I always say breathing in your chest is I'm being chased by a tiger, right? And then really our parasympathetic or soothing nervous system is
Mhm.
in our low
Mhm.
belly. So
Yes.
learning to push your breath into your belly is huge, right? Um my other favorite one is the annoying pen.
Oh yeah.
What is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have a pen, right, even if it was
I should have
clicky,
been prepared.
it's all right. It's all right. I'm sure everybody can imagine me holding one, right? So if you have a pen, right,
Yeah.
so you want to unclick it, and there's this circle at the top, right?
Mhm.
So in your dominant hand, you're going to position your hand on the pen. Now, whatever you do not reposition your hand. And in a couple minutes, or maybe sooner, you're going to get really annoyed with this pen because you're going to want to move your hand and adjust it. Don't. Keep being annoyed. Now, why is that important? Because that means your brain and your body plugged back in and
Mhm.
are communicating. Because when we get dysregulated, we go to our middle brain,
Right.
our amygdala
Yes.
lights up, raw emotions are
Yes.
firing, and our front brain is where our brain and body talk,
Yes.
right? So if you're having a difficult time, focus on that sensation with your thumb. It's already annoying. I want to move my hand, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And get into your front brain just enough that you can turn back to your plan. You can be relational and stick with it.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Get you back into this.
Mhm.
I
Because the
love it.
body keeps score, right?
100%.
So whether it's trauma induced, whether
Mhm.
it's emotional, you are having a physiological response to what is happening in the room.
Yes.
And we got to get you back in control. Whether that looks like you being able to sit and take a deep breath, right? Or I had a mom that I used to work with where I would literally bring, like, if she was having a moment, we would just look at her and just say, do you need to go get a Diet Pepsi? Because she had told me a story about how growing up, her father shared Pepsi with her and always made her feel good.
Mhm.
So she would go grab that Pepsi and she would try to talk to me and I would just look at her and go, I can wait. I'm totally fine. And she would sit. And what we would do is make sure that when she took that gulp of the Pepsi, which the carbonation burns, she had to
Mhm.
wait until it went all the way to her belly
Mhm. Mhm.
before speaking. Same thing with hot tea. So you're really helping them to get back in touch with their all of their senses,
Mhm.
right? Even if you're asking, tell me what you see, tell me what you smell, tell me what
Mhm.
you taste, tell me,
Mhm.
what you're like, a couple things to touch.
Yes.
You're just helping them get back into their control of their body, because
Mhm.
that's what's going to be helpful to them to be able to even simultaneously slow their thinking and their brains down.
I love it. And also, what I so appreciate with that example is you were not afraid of the time it took for her to get back to a place, for the bubbles to get all the way to her belly,
Mm-hmm.
for there to be that space instead of trying to rush through it. Okay, get the Coke so we can. It's actually recognizing, no, I
Mm-hmm.
can wait. Like, this is just as important as whatever it is we're getting ready to talk
Mm-hmm.
about, because you're now learning a mind body skill
Mhm.
that could live beyond our visits.
Mm-hmm.
We're now breaking generational patterns of dysregulation,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And Pinky's selling it short too, because she left out that everything she's asking that mother to do,
I'm doing.
she's done, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
There are times where I sit in a session and I go, I need a minute because I feel like I just got sucker punched and the wind knocked out of me.
Yeah.
Can we
Yes.
just take a breath for a
Can we
second?
just take a breath? Because honestly, they probably needed a breath as
Mm-hmm.
well. So you're creating permission for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
even the unspoken.
Yeah. Or with children and adolescents, I have been known to use, and I will say to them, whoo, you're getting really loud and I need your help. Because when you hit a certain decibel, my body just starts shutting down and it is really hard for me to hear what you're really wanting to say to me. So, can we take a second
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and try again?
Yes. This is so beautiful. This is just so, I need a part two. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I do want in our recording to capture what's on the horizon. Like, what are some things that are coming up for
Oh
you?
man. Well, we are going to be working on releasing a bunch of asynchronous CE programs.
Mm-hmm.
We're presenting at the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy on homicide behavior and systemic family therapy. We also have a program coming up, homicide suicide behavior
Wow.
and family therapy. Um, and, I'm laughing as I'm thinking of my older sister when she asks me the same question. I tell her stuff and she goes, "That's really intense." And I think for the center, it's we're recognizing this stuff isn't going anywhere, right? Like we had just a couple months ago did a training on guns in the home community and the referral behavior, right? Like we have to learn how to have these conversations as
Mm-hmm.
professionals. You don't have to fix it, but you have to be intentional and brave and be prepared. And so I think really what's been coming on the horizon for the center is leaning into the big stuff because we have to.
Yes.
We
Mm-hmm.
can't act like it's not there, but then also really working to think about the different levels of care
Mm-hmm.
and how we can integrate systemic thinking
Yep.
across services with pediatrics.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, we've also been extending and doing some work across various universities and institutions all over the world. I think recently
Mhm.
just in Eastern Europe,
Yep.
right? Like in the country of Georgia. So
Mm.
just also expanding that and bringing more of that systemic thinking and collaborative work across all levels of care, but also foremost continuing to support and promote the in-home work that's done here,
Mhm.
because it's such a gift and it's so wonderful to be able to for families to have someone come in and be able to work with them and not be tied to, well, I'm only here for 50 minutes and, this, that, and the other thing. So they can really go from, let's just do the traditional talk therapy to, we're also going to create space to help you practice these things with our support.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Because that's how generational cycles are broken.
Yeah.
Through the practice.
You got to practice every session.
Yeah.
Every session.
Yeah.
Practice every session.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it.
And you don't do it with the child. You practice the caregiver doing it with the child every session.
Yeah.
Yep.
The child is not the problem, the relationship. Oh, that right there was golden. I'm going to be tweeting that tomorrow, everyone. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for your honesty, for the work that you are doing, because we are in a time where just having the safe, comfortable conversation is allowing more people to die. And we cannot be afraid or even be the ones holding on to information and gifts and insight. We can't hold on to it. We have to share.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate
Oh my gosh, so much fun.
This was amazing. All right, Facebook fam, we will see you next week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.